Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome to another episode of the live chat. We are back. So I have not done a live chat yet this week. I know it's been a bit of a while since we've done one. But yeah, we're squeezing one in right at the end of the week. Sorry if my camera's a bit out of focus. But yes, welcome everyone to the live chat. Sorry, the focus is a little off. There we go. Should be better now, I hope at least. So yes, we are getting one in just in time right at the end of the week. So anyone that hasn't been part of the live chat before, the way this works, you drop your comments, you drop your questions down into chat. We break it all down. We talk about the biggest gaming news. And obviously, the biggest one on the docket today is clearly we now have confirmation. That's right. We have the exact date. We know June 4th, Sony will showcase a PlayStation 5 games lineup. It sounds like it's going to be first-party games. Sounds like there's going to be third-party games. There's going to be obviously big exclusives there. And yeah, it looks like it's going to be about an hour long. That's what they're saying, is about an hour long show. So that's really, really exciting. There's a ton we can talk about in regards to that. What does this mean for Sony? What does it mean for Microsoft and Xbox? What are our expectations on what games are going to be there? And so much more. So make sure you drop those comments, drop those questions on the side. Another piece of information that just came out is that The Last of Us Part 2 pre-orders are looking very, very strong, especially in Europe. Jim Ryan has come out and said that it's actually outpacing Spider-Man in Europe. So we can talk about that and so much more. So yeah, make sure you drop those comments, drop those questions in chat, and let's get rolling because I can see there's already quite a few dropping. So let's jump in and let's get going. One more really, really quick note before we dive into the chat. I was just on a podcast earlier this week. That's part of the reason why we didn't get a live chat in until Friday. I was part of the Pixels podcast. You can find that on Spotify, Google, Apple, kind of all over the place. It was a really fun show. It was a good show, and I was very happy to be on there. So yeah, make sure you check that out if you haven't yet. Pixels podcast. So it was a really fun one. All right, let's get rolling on your questions because there's so much to dive into. Dip Dop Doopity. What do you think of Jim Ryan's remarks commenting that The Last of Us 2 is selling more pre-orders in Europe than Marvel's Spider-Man in the same time frame? Yes, so we're going to go right into some sales talk, which is completely fine with me. That's my favorite. So here's a couple takeaways we can get from that. First of all, that's huge, right? Those are huge, huge, huge numbers. Spider-Man PS4 did absolutely amazing. In fact, it's the current record holder for the fastest selling exclusive game ever for PlayStation. It sold 3.3 million units in only 3 days. Now, that's not shipped. That's actually sold through to consumers. So that's amazing. Over 3 million units in 3 days, 3.3 million. That's incredible. So if it's tracking better in Europe, that's an amazing sign for The Last of Us Part 2. There is a little bit more, though, that we can actually dig out of this. So I noticed Jim Ryan did not say global pre-orders are tracking higher than Spider-Man. He also did not mention anything to do with the US. He specifically mentioned one market. He said in Europe, it's tracking higher. So that would lead me to believe, just using his statements, this isn't fact, I'm just basing this off of what he's saying. It sounds like maybe that in the US, pre-orders for The Last of Us Part 2 aren't quite as high as Spider-Man. So it actually could be a very close race. That's what I tweeted. I said, it could be really, really close between these two. Let's just theorize that it plays out that way, right? Let's say in Europe, The Last of Us Part 2 is bigger. Let's say in the US, Spider-Man's bigger. It could end up that they're very, very close in the end. But the good news, at least the bare minimum good news here, is that The Last of Us Part 2 is clearly tracking huge. Like I said, even in any market, if in any of the markets you're tracking higher than the current record holder, that's looking darn good. I think we can pretty much lock in that 3+ million is probably going to happen in those first 3 days. I feel pretty confident about that. I've been feeling that The Last of Us Part 2 was either going to set the record or be probably very, very close to the record for a while now. One tweet I had that kind of blew up, and I actually didn't expect it to really blow up the way it did online. A lot of discussion around it. was I had commented how the metrics, the social media metrics for The Last of Us Part 2 haven't exactly been wowing me or blowing me away for the last couple weeks. And there's been some debate on that, like, why is that happening? Is it anything to be worried about? And one thing I tried to make really clear was that it was an interesting data point, but people shouldn't run away with that and just assume, oh, well, if it's not doing the kind of views, for example, Ghost of Tsushima did on State of Play. The Last of Us Part 2 State of Play is at currently it's around 1.1 million views. It's the second highest viewed State of Play ever, so amazing, but it is still quite a bit behind Ghost of Tsushima, which is at over 1.7 million views, and Ghost of Tsushima was over 1.2 million views in less than a day. So in other words, the Ghost of Tsushima State of Play was just bigger. But again, people shouldn't, I keep track of those data points. I think they're really interesting. I think there's a lot we can take away from them, but people shouldn't just assume, oh, wow, if Ghost is doing better in views, that means it's going to be bigger than The Last of Us, not by any means. I think there's a lot of reasons why The Last of Us Part 2 hasn't had these, just gigantic metrics on YouTube. I think it's been one of those things that, it's such a story heavy game that people kind of don't want to see too much before launch. Of course, there has been like the spoilers online, so people are probably being very careful about what all they go into because they don't want to be spoiled. So there's a lot of reasons, I think, that you haven't necessarily seen, let's just say, The Last of Us Part 2 getting on YouTube like 10 million views. I think there's reasons behind it. So nothing to panic about, but it has been an interesting data point, that it hasn't had these just gigantic numbers right before launch, because a lot of times for record holders, you see that giant spike, but clearly The Last of Us is doing really, really, really good numbers in pre-orders. So I don't think anyone should be quote, worried that are fans of The Last of Us that it's going to underperform. In fact, it looks like it is in contention to break the record. It could be close. Like I said, if Spider-Man's bigger in the US is a huge market. If The Last of Us is bigger in Europe, Europe's a huge market. It could be very close in the end. It potentially could be a toss-up on which one's bigger, but that's still amazing territory for The Last of Us to be in. If it's in contention for the biggest opening ever, it's doing really good, doing really, really good. All right, Forzathon. What do you think of the difference in approaches to cross-gen games between Sony and Microsoft? Yes, good question. So that is one thing that Sony came out and said in this whole reveal statement that they've done this morning, announcing the June 4th showcase. Jim Ryan himself said that they're going to show things that are only on PS5, not PS4 games, not cross-gen games, things that are only possible on the PlayStation 5. Whereas we know that Xbox, for example, they've said that everything for like the first year to 2 years is going to be cross-gen. So we at least know, the big ones that are pretty close for Microsoft, let's say like Halo Infinite, obviously, probably the next Forza game, things like this are going to be cross-gen. Whereas Sony, it looks like, are basically going full scale into PS5 only games. I still wouldn't be shocked maybe if there is like 1 or 2 more cross-gen games from Sony. I think that is theoretically possible because the PS4 install base is so big. If you notice, Jim Ryan didn't say there's no more PS4 games coming. It's just that, on this showcase, they're really highlighting games that are going to be like PS5 only from their first party and things like that. So there could be a couple cross-gen projects still left in the works, but it definitely seems very clear that the bulk of Sony's first-party studios are shifting to PS5 only development. And yeah, it's an interesting take, because we're seeing two totally different mindsets. Clearly, Sony still believes more in these like hard cut generations, like, just like we've seen in the past, right? PS1 to PS2 to PS3, there were these really hard stop gaps between gens. Microsoft's trying to blur the lines a little bit. Obviously, I think eventually there are going to be next gen only Xbox games, right? I don't think any of us think that forever Microsoft's first party will be making Xbox One games, but it is going to be a bit longer. So they are blurring those lines a little bit more than Sony is. It's interesting to see. I think that I can see the pros and cons for both. On one hand, I think it's a much better idea to sell new consoles when you have games that you can only get on new consoles. So on one hand, I think Sony is making the right moves there, by making these only PS5 games. If you want to play, let's say, for example, Horizon Zero Dawn 2, I would be utterly shocked if that's a cross-gen game. That's probably next gen only. I think we all think that. Like, you have to go out and buy a PlayStation 5. That is going to drive adoption by having these games. You cannot play anywhere else. If you want to play it, go get a PS5. So on one hand, I think it's very, very smart to be moving consoles. On the other hand, I can somewhat see Microsoft's thought process, because obviously install base early on is going to be much smaller on next gen, right? So your total software volume, it is harder to get like really high sales or like really high engagements on these games that are going to be, early on in the gen that are only next gen, because let's say that it's a huge success. Let's say that the next gen launch is gigantic. You're still only looking, at a handful of million units, in those first 6 months, right? You're not going to be looking at 20 million install base right off the bat. So I think there's pros and cons to both. In terms of like which I think is the hardcore better approach, if I had to choose, I think I would go with Sony's approach actually more than Xbox. Not trying to knock Xbox, but I think it is very important to at least have a couple next gen only games. I think that's an important thing. So if I had to choose, I'd go that way. The chat is over 100 in chat. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I love seeing the live chat grow. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to that. We have been hitting over 100 people in chat lately, so that's amazing. Thank you so much, everyone. It's amazing to see the chat growth. We get so many more questions and engagement whenever we have more people here. So thank you, everyone, for jumping in the stream. And also, I have a super chat. So let me really quick shout out that super chat. And then I'm going to come right back to your questions. So give me just a second here. I don't want to miss any of these. Oh, and we actually have two. I missed one that was really quick. So Split End 89 saying, "You're the best dude, rock on." Thank you for the kind words, Split End 89. And shout out everyone to Split End 89. He does all the moderating here on the feed, on the chat. So thank you, Split End. You are amazing. And then we have another one here from Killian Butler. I'm going to answer Killian's question right here because, with the super chat, I definitely want to hit the question and never miss it. So Killian Butler, hey, Benji, with the release of The Last of Us 2 approaching, I'm curious what their next game will be. Do you think it could be a new IP or a sequel, an established franchise, or even some sort of a reboot? Great question, Killian. I'm guessing, and this is a guess, this isn't inside, info or inside baseball. I think Naughty Dog's next game is going to be a new IP. I think that just makes the most sense. Whenever you see what Naughty Dog did with Uncharted 4, they kind of really, wrapped that up, I felt like, for the studio. I'm not going to be shocked at all if you see more Uncharted in the future. I'm just not sure that that's going to come from Naughty Dog. I think maybe another Sony team might tackle Uncharted. And I think Naughty Dog has kind of separated themselves away from that. With The Last of Us, we know this has been a huge undertaking for the company. It's been so much investment. They've been working on this game for years. I don't think they want to do The Last of Us 2 and then The Last of Us 3 right back to back. Who even knows if there will be a third The Last of Us game? But if there is, I think it is going to be farther away. I don't think they're going to want to do 2 The Last of Us games just in a row. Those are such intense games. And, I think they're going to want to try their hand at something different. So Killian, my guess, and again, not inside info, but my guess, Killian, is that Naughty Dog's next game, probably a new IP. I think they're going to go the new IP route, which would be awesome. I'd love to see what they're going to tackle next. All right. So let's go back up to the questions that from earlier. Brooby. Hey, Benji, how are you doing? I'm doing really good, Brooby. It's a bit of wild times out there right now for the world. 2020 has been a crazy year, but I'm holding up pretty well, and I hope you're doing good as well, Brooby. What are you expecting? How many units will the PS5 and Xbox Series X sell in 2020? How are the sales tracking in May? So we have a two-part question here, and first I'll tackle your first one. Brooby, I still think that combined sales for Series X and PS5 might be higher than PS4 and Xbox One. I know that sounds kind of wild. We have a pandemic that has been going on for a while, but production has basically caught back up. You've seen both Sony and Microsoft comment that they feel very confident about the holiday launch. They're actually not even really worried about how many units they can make anymore. Phil Spencer just said that recently. I was listening to a podcast he was on with Reggie, from Nintendo, and he had previously from Nintendo, now at GameStop. And one thing Phil said during that interview on that podcast, he specifically said that they're good. Like they feel really good about units and they're not worried about that side of things. So, I think demand is really high. Whenever you look at how much hype people have had for the PlayStation 5, how much they've had for the next gen Xbox. I think the next gen Xbox has a lot more excitement about it than the Xbox One did. If you remember, the Xbox One buildup was really rough, to put it mildly, for Microsoft. It was rough. So I think we have potential to have higher unit sales at launch than last gen. A huge factor in that's going to be price, of course. What are these priced at? Are they $500 boxes? Are they $450 boxes? Are they even potentially $399? Who knows? So price is going to be a factor. There's a whole bunch that goes into it, but I'm expecting Bruby very, very strong launches. I think PlayStation 5 launch will be bigger than Xbox launch worldwide. I feel very confident in that at launch, Sony is going to sell more units of the PlayStation 5 than Microsoft will sell of the Xbox. But I think that Xbox sales in the US specifically will be very strong. So I actually think that I think PS5 and Xbox Series X could be very competitive in the US at launch. A lot of people don't realize, I can't go into the NDA data, but a lot of people still have no idea how close Xbox One and PlayStation 4 are in the US. They are, very, very close. A lot of people do not realize we're talking a very small percentage difference. And that's with PlayStation 4 dominating globally. So if Xbox One has been this competitive and they've had all of these issues, I think next gen, which is looking better for Microsoft, could be very, very close. But overall, Ruby, to kind of wrap it up, I'm expecting very strong launches for both. I think both are going to do very, very well this holiday. In terms of tracking for May, I'll say I hope everyone enjoyed the record-setting crazy performances in March and April, because May is going to be way less exciting. From all the data I've seen, from all of the tracking that I do, I'm usually pretty in the ballpark on this thing. Again, not perfect. Doing sales predictions is tough. But everything I'm seeing in May, don't expect the kind of things you saw in March and April. It's just not going to happen. Switch potentially could still break the current gen record in May. I actually think that there's a very strong chance of that, but I would not expect, for example, these crazy units that we saw out of the Switch in March and April. You're going to see a big drop. So potentially a new record still for the current gen for Switch, but don't go into May expecting these just ginormous, we're talking truly absurd numbers that we saw in March and April. It's not going to be that, okay? It's not going to be that big. Cool Francis 19. Hey, Benji, do you think Blue Point will be at the event? Yes, Cool Francis, I think so. I think you can lock in Blue Point. If you remember, the very first time Sony really started talking about the PlayStation 5 was in a Wired article, and one of the very first things that they mentioned was Blue Point. That was one of the very first pieces of info they said. They said, hey, Blue Point's working on a PlayStation 5 game. I think the reason they were putting that out there so early is that it's a launch title. So yes, Cool Francis, I think you're finally going to see Blue Point's game, and I think it's going to come out at launch. I think so. I think all the data would line up for that. Red Superior. Hey, Benji, I just started following you a few weeks ago. Thank you so much. Thank you for following. And been having lots of fun. What do you think about Xbox backwards compatibility announcement and how it's going to affect sales compared to PlayStation 5? Thank you for the follow, Red Superior. That's really awesome. I appreciate it. In terms of the Xbox announcement, I think it's amazing stuff. Microsoft just came out and they mentioned how they're going to be adding HDR to older games. Older games are going to load way faster. They're going to increase frame rates on certain titles up to 60 FPS and 120 FPS. I think it's amazing stuff. In terms of sales impact, back compatibility is a nice thing to have for sure. I don't think, though, it's a make or break scenario for most people in terms of sales. And we know that the PlayStation 5 is backwards compatible, in some way with PlayStation 4 games. We still don't know the exact amount, the exact percentage. There's still some we don't know there, but we definitely know for sure, at the very least, that PlayStation 5 does have backwards compatibility in some manner with PlayStation 4. So I would say it would be a bigger deal, Red Superior, if PlayStation 5 had none, right? Let's say Sony was coming out and they were saying PlayStation 5 has 0 backwards compatibility and Microsoft was saying all this backwards compatibility stuff. Then I think it would be actually a bigger issue, because you'd have one platform that potentially, has access to a much larger library than the other. So then I think it would be a big deal. But the fact that PlayStation 5 is backwards compatible, less of a big deal. But I do want to give a big shout out to the Microsoft backwards compatibility team, because they do amazing work. The stuff they did on the One X was impressive, and now they're going even further with Series X. So definitely shout out to the Xbox back compat crew. But in terms of sales, I don't think it's a make or break scenario. Elias Stapleton. The Last of Us 2 seems to be really, really big. I think it will beat Spider-Man. What do you think? Elias, I think it's going to be close. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I think it's telling that Jim Ryan did not say globally it had higher pre-orders. I think if it did, he would have said that, considering he went out of his way to talk about European pre-orders. It means that they wanted to talk about a number. So I think if global pre-orders were higher than Spider-Man, I think he would have just used that terminology instead of saying specifically Europe. He just mentioned one market. I think if they were globally higher, he would have said that. So I think it's going to be close, Elias. Kind of like I said off the top, I think it's going to be a close race. I do think that The Last of Us is going to get over that 3 million range within 3 days. It's just a matter of if it's over 3.3. It could be a very close race. Let me grab a drink of coffee really quick. Gotta love that coffee, baby. All right. Javier. Hi, Benji. I can't wait to see the PS5 reveal with this community. Yes, I'm so excited. I'm going to live stream it. So I know a lot of people, whenever they watch these streams like me, when you're watching it live, you don't want to have like reaction and commentary over what you're watching. You really want to focus on the games. But I am going to live stream the whole event. I'm going to do a pre-show for 30 minutes, and then I'm going to do a wrap-up post-show afterwards. So if anyone wants to jump in, and do the whole pre-show with me and then bounce out while they watch the live stream and come back for the after show, I will be doing all of that on this channel. And, you can always go back and watch my reactions. I did one for Inside Xbox. It was rough. I will openly admit it. I'd never done a companion stream like that. And I was struggling technology-wise to figure it out. But I think I finally got it worked out. So yes, we will be having PlayStation 5 related content on the channel. So awesome. And then the other part of your question, do you think that we will see a new first party studio in this event? Maybe an acquisition or the rumored San Diego studio? Ooh, good question. Man, that's a great question. I'm going to say that you maybe don't see like an acquisition. I don't think that's coming on the table. Could be wrong. I'd say a new studio is possible. Like maybe they're like a creating of a new internal team. I don't think something like that is crazy. But I haven't really seen much like evidence, at least like online, that Sony is buying anyone right now. So an acquisition, I would say probably pretty low. Them announcing a new internal studio, though, is definitely possible. Definitely possible. Elias Stapleton. I think more than 1 million persons will be live on the stream of PS5. Just the one of the Mark Cerny, if I remember, had like 600,000. Yeah, the metrics, the live viewers are going to be crazy. It's going to be huge. Huge, huge, huge. I think 1 million's not crazy. They could definitely do it. Like you said, look at what the Cerny one did. And that was just them, giving this really dry presentation for the PlayStation 5. I think it was cool to see like the thought process Cerny had behind the architecture of the console. But if you're talking like, your average consumer, they that's not really the type of thing they normally tune into. So the fact that did as much viewers as it did, I can only imagine what like a full-on game showcase is going to do, right? That's going to be a huge success. So I think 1 million's not crazy. You could see 1 million live viewers on that. It's totally possible. I'm expecting it to be really high. That's for darn sure. Forzathon. Hey, Benji, do you think Xbox will secure its superhero game as an answer to Spider-Man? This is a good question because as of now, Xbox have nothing to compete with one of Sony's biggest exclusives. That's a really good question, Forzathon, especially as superheroes are still so popular right now. Sony had exclusive the Spider-Man game. Nintendo had the exclusive Marvel Ultimate Alliance game. You haven't seen Xbox try to lock in a big exclusive superhero game. Will they or not? Ooh, man, that is tough. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no in terms of do they have a superhero exclusive coming? It would be beneficial if they did, I think, because that genre is so big, and especially if they could get a really high quality one. But I'm going to guess no. As of now, I'm going to say that they don't have an exclusive superhero game. I think they're just kind of doing these multi-platform games like, obviously the next Batman game and Avengers from Square Enix. I think they're just kind of banking off those multi-platforms and haven't secured an exclusive one. To bounce off that, though, I'd love to see a Doctor Strange game. I want someone to make Doctor Strange. How perfect would Doctor Strange be for a video game? I mean, I think it's a perfect fit. The crazy, fantastical worlds that Doctor Strange goes to, his powers, man, that's what I want to see. Someone out there, please, someone make a Doctor Strange game. Jivesh Hanuman, sorry if I, really mess up your name. Sega's Revolutionary News is also on the 4th of June. Yeah, that's interesting, right? Do you think it's connected to the PS5 event? So anyone that hasn't seen that, there is a very big news story coming out of, I think it's Famitsu. I could be wrong on that, but I think Famitsu is the one running the story. And they have what they're claiming is a gigantic piece, an exclusive look at something. And the rumors apparently are that it is Sega related, and it is the same day. So that is interesting. It could be tied into the PlayStation 5. I wouldn't go crazy and think it means that Sony's acquiring Sega or buying Sega. I would not go that route. Sega is a gigantic company, and I don't think anyone is planning on spending anywhere near that kind of money. But maybe Sega is going to announce a very, very big game at the PlayStation 5 event because we know third parties are going to be there. So maybe there's going to be an announcement at the Sony event, and then, maybe Famitsu has like a preview of that game. It's entirely possible. Sega makes some very big franchises. We've got Persona in there. We've got Yakuza in there. There's a whole bunch of different stuff it could be. So I'd say it's possible. The fact they're on the same day and they've been hyping it as big as they have, they could be tied together. It would be an awfully interesting coincidence if they're not. Elias Stapleton. Benji, what are your predictions for exclusive games in the stream? And if you see a lot of Guerrilla devs are teasing the event, yeah, I think Guerrilla is a lock. I think you can definitely expect Guerrilla there. Guerrilla was there at the PlayStation 4 reveal event showcasing Killzone. Guerrilla is known, internally at Sony as basically being like on the cutting edge of technology all the way back to like, Killzone 2 and 3. Guerrilla's always been pushing like cutting edge visuals really hard. They're right up there with like Naughty Dog in terms of like the most impressive visuals for Sony first party. So I think Guerrilla's a lock. I think Sony's going to want to show something really big from them. Probably Horizon Zero Dawn 2. Whenever you think about it, that game came out all the way back in like 2017. So they've been working on it in some form for like 3 years. Obviously they did the Frozen Wilds expansion, but I'm sure Horizon 2 went into pre-production basically as soon as Horizon 1 wrapped up. So, in some capacity, they've basically been working on it for 3 years. So they should definitely have something ready to show. Whether that's going to be a launch game or not, that's tough to say. 3 years for a big open world game it's doable, but it would be difficult. but I think Horizon is going to release Horizon Zero Dawn 2 in the first year of the PlayStation 5. So I think it is going to be, by holiday 2021 come out. So it would definitely make sense to show it there. So I think Guerrilla is one you can 100% lock in to show something. Javier, do you think we will see something Sega in the event? Okay, we just went on this. It's possible considering that rumor. And then saying you really hope we get to see Resident Evil 8 and a new Final Fantasy. Greetings from Spain. Greetings to Spain. I would say both of those are strong possibilities. Resident Evil 8, we know, I shouldn't say no, but very likely is coming out basically sometime within the next 12 months. Whenever you look at the projections that Capcom has put out for their next fiscal year, it sure paints the picture of a Resident Evil title releasing at the latest of March of next year. So, and then there's been all those other rumors about it. We know that Resident Evil typically has PlayStation marketing with it. So I'd say Resident Evil 8 is like very likely. In fact, I would put that as one of my most likely locks. If 8's not there, I'll be really surprised. I really will be surprised by that. So I think Resident Evil 8, pencil that in. Final Fantasy, I would say, is definitely possible, but not as likely as Resident Evil 8. But I do think you're going to see Final Fantasy 16 in the next year. We know it's been in development for a long time. It's not the same team that did Final Fantasy 7 Remake. It's a completely different team at Square Enix making Final Fantasy 16. So it's been in development for quite a while now. 15 came out quite a long ways ago at this point. So I do think you'll see Final Fantasy announced like in the next year. Whether that's at the Sony event or not, I don't know. But I don't think you'll have to wait too long at least to see 16. A lot of questions about that Famitsu article. Yeah, it's interesting stuff. Baiko Sierras. Hello, Benji. After seeing the PS Vita and the Last of Us gameplay trailer, do you think that Sony maybe has plans about re-entering the handheld market, or was it just an Easter egg? I think it's just an Easter egg, to be honest with you. I think they're so focused right now on just their hardcore gaming, at home. Here's what I will say. We know that Sony is going to obviously keep increasing cloud. They are going to keep going that way. They have PS Now. You are going to see cloud continue to grow for them, streaming. Maybe it's not impossible that you see a handheld at some point that's basically a streaming device. I actually don't think that's crazy at all. But I don't think you're going to see Sony like go straight up, like release a big, handheld Vita, PSP, tons of investment, tons of first-party games. I am not expecting that. The handheld market is just not that big anymore, compared to the way it used to be. And also what is there is dominated by Nintendo. So I think if you do see some sort of handheld come out of Sony, it's going to be more of like a streaming focused type thing. And that's more like supplemental than it is like we're going all in on really investing in a handheld. I think that Vita thing was just more of an Easter egg. Crystal Keyframes. Hi, Benji. How many games should we be expecting? To me, a slate sounds anywhere between 4 and 12. I'd expect a lot, Crystal. I think we're going to see quite a few. We know the stream's an hour. Hour is a pretty long time. Whenever you're talking about games, you can show a lot in an hour. Even if you gave each game, let's say 10 minutes, you're still looking at like 6 games minimum, Obviously, you're going to have a little bit of room in there for talking and stuff, but not every game is going to get this big, long 10-minute thing. So I think it's going to be pretty high. I think you're going to see quite a few games here. I don't know if you're going to see, 12. 12's pretty high. That's a pretty big show, but it's possible. We're not looking at quite the length of some E3s. There's been some E3s that are like 2 hours long, so it's not that size, but it's pretty big. You can show a lot in an hour, so I would expect quite a bit more than like 4. I would say, probably anywhere from 8 or more. I really think you could see, that many, because we know it's first party and third party, so there should be quite a bit. Red Hood 420. Have you noticed the difference in pre-order sales for The Last of Us Part 2 when they did the State of Play? I noticed more people are changing their mind about the game after the showing. I haven't seen a ton of data post that, that just happened. So it's kind of hard to get a ton of look at pre-order information like within a day or two. I need to see quite a bit more evidence before I go into that route. I can tell you I haven't seen any evidence that it's spiking the same way that Final Fantasy VII Remake did with the demo. If you remember back when that demo came out, I was talking a bunch about how pre-orders went completely insane after that demo released. I haven't seen the same sort of thing from the state of play and the very limited stuff that I've seen. But it does seem like there has been a lot of good vibes from the state of play, and the state of play is doing well. It's not doing as big of numbers as Ghost of Tsushima did, but it's still doing really good. It's the second most watched state of play ever right now. So clearly it is getting a lot of attention. So I would not be worried about it. I would not be worried. Aceville or Aceville. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good to see you here. Elias Stapleton. Do you think the PS5 events that were canceled by persons in Sony are a direct answer to Microsoft, where the executives were recording with a cam of low level and Sony saw this like a bad thing? So one of the rumors that's floating around there, this isn't inside info for me. I'm not sure where it came from. It might have been Alana Pierce that said this. I honestly don't remember, but I just saw it floating around on the interwebs. And one of the things that was out there, maybe it was even Jeff Grubb. I honestly can't remember the source. I apologize on that. But one of the rumors that's floating around is that Sony really wanted this to be like really professional, that they were really, for a while now. And that's part of the reason a date hasn't been locked down and it's kind of shifted, is that they wanted this to look really, really nice, really, really professional. And I think that's smart. I think whenever you're first showcasing your games, you want a professional, sleek, good looking presentation. Obviously we're not going to be able to get the big giant press conference like we traditionally see. So what's the next best thing you can do is a really good high quality stream. So, whether those rumors are true, that's why the date has been shifting and such, I don't know, but it would make sense. It would make sense to me because I think that it is going to look good. Nintendo Directs are known for that. They look really, really nice. They flow really well, nice presentation in the Nintendo Directs. And I think Sony's trying to go more that route. Obviously, this isn't going to look exactly like a Nintendo Direct, but what I mean is high production values. Joseki. Yo, Benji, I hope you're doing fine. Yep, doing good. What are the early indications for Xenoblade sales? My collector's edition arrived today, and the game is fire. Monolith, the JRPG goats. Yeah, so I'm going to be picking that game up as well. I haven't bought it yet, but I'm going to buy it in the next day or two, and that's going to be my first ever Xenoblade that I play. I actually own Xenoblade 2. I have it right here, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and I have not played it. In fact, it's still in, it's out of the shrink wrap, but I have not played it yet. I've had this forever. I actually have the game upstairs in my Switch case. I've been meaning to get to it forever, and I just haven't gotten to it. So the fact that Xenoblade Definitive Edition is coming out now, like I'm actually kind of glad I didn't play Xenoblade 2 because I'm going to be able to play the Definitive Edition and then play 2. So yeah, good stuff. I'm expecting Xenoblade to do really, really well. 2+ million in sales is kind of the thought process I have behind it, which might sound not as impressive compared to some games, but for Xenoblade, over 2 million would be amazing. So I really do think it could be in that range, 2+ million. Maybe it goes way higher, but that's just kind of like the general thought I have on it, Joseki. I think 2+ million for Xenoblade Definitive Edition. Exile N saying Knack 3 is about to be so hype. Yes. That would be kind of funny even if they're not making Knack 3, if Sony did a bit of a tech demo with Knack, how fun would that be? I would actually be I think that'd be fun. Just to like show the PS5, they do this like little Knack thing. That would be fun. I'd be shocked if we actually see Knack 3. But maybe like a little, just like as a wink and a nod, maybe you see like a little tech demo with that. Diego saying, told you the event announced before your live stream. Yeah, I'm glad they did. Thank you, Sony. Thank you, Sony, because otherwise I had a stream planned for today no matter what. So otherwise we would be just guessing a lot at like, maybe it's going to happen. Thank you, Sony, for putting that out there before my stream. It makes talking about this much more hype and much easier. Mr. Moss, do you think that we actually see the PS5 design? I think so. Yeah, I think you are going to see the box, and there's a reason for that. The console is about to start being made, or it is actually already being made, one or the other. Put it this way: the PS5 is already in full scale production right now, or it's going to be in full scale production within the next couple weeks. They cannot hide the design for that long. If you're Sony, here's your choice. Do you want to show it on your own terms, let the world see it, and really HD, great looking stream with all the nice angles? Do you want to present it that way, or do you want someone in a factory somewhere to just leak pictures of it? Because that's what's going to happen. You have two choices within the next couple weeks: either that, or it's literally going to leak within 2 to 3 weeks, I would say at most, because production will be full scale by June if they're launching in November. So I think so. I do think you see the box, because otherwise I have no idea why you wouldn't do that on your own marketing terms and just allow it to leak. I think you will see the box. What I don't think you're going to see is the price. I really don't think you're going to get a price tag here. Sony and Microsoft are still in this dead stalemate. Neither one of them want to even hint at a price. They don't want to go into it at all. Anytime anyone asks them about price, both of them just say the same thing: we're going to be competitive. Like, that's all that they're saying. I still don't think you get a price. It'd be awesome if they say it, but I don't think so. I don't think we're going to get a price until later this summer when pre-orders open. I don't think they're going to start pre-orders yet either. I hope I'm wrong. I hope we get a price. I hope we get pre-orders, the whole 9 yards. But I don't think we're going to get price until probably like August. I think so, but we'll see. Not my real name. Please say Black Lives Matter. Well, absolutely, Black lives do matter, and it's horrible what's going on right now. Absolutely horrible. Split End 89. Hey, dude, I think it would be a great idea for Rockstar to drop Grand Theft Auto 5 online on PS5, Xbox Series X as fast as possible and get this free. Go Fortnite route and make those DLC dollars. Ooh, that's interesting. That is interesting. Ooh, Grand Theft Auto 5 online, go free to play. Man. Well, Grand Theft Auto 5 is selling so well still. Split End 89. I totally think you're smart on the vast majority of companies. Like, for a multiplayer game like that with so much momentum, it would make sense to do it. But it's still selling so well. It's like still selling so well. I mean, I don't think they're going to go free to play, because Grand Theft Auto 5 by itself is still selling so many units. It shipped 10 million units in the last 3 months. So I don't think they're going to go free to play, because if you're still selling tens of millions of units in small time periods, that's so much money. I get what you're saying. They could make even more money potentially by going free to play. Split End 89, I think your thought process is super good. I'm just going to, for now, say no, because it's still selling so well. But what I will say, Split End, is if you start to see that slow down, Grand Theft Auto 5 hasn't slowed down yet, but let's say maybe it finally slows down, then I think they will go free to play. But as of now, they don't really need to. Silence PP7. If Iron Man VR turns out well, could we see Marvel Games pushing for a single-player Iron Man game in the vein of Insomniac Spider-Man? Ooh, I mean, you could. Silenced. Iron Man is, such a massive hero. Here's what I'll say. I think if the Avengers game does really well, which is a bit of a toss-up right now, how is Avengers going to go? We don't really... There's a couple different ways to think how it's going to go in terms of sales right now. I would say if it's a really big success, let's say that Avengers is a giant success, it sells a ton, people really like it, I think you're definitely going to see more spin-off games. I think they will be like, hey, we have something going here. Spider-Man did awesome. Avengers did really good. I would say if Avengers does well, expect Iron Man games, Thor games, because they will have those in-universe characters. I think you will. Silence PP7, I would say, I think it depends more on Avengers than it does Iron Man VR. I think that's a really big thing for Marvel right now. How is Avengers going to do? And Exenhume, The Last of Us tracking after State of Play, we talked about that. Doing really well in Europe, especially Europe is doing awesome. Pucklin, really hoping the new Call of Duty will be there. Yeah, it's got to be, right? It's a great point. Saying Modern Warfare just didn't do it for me. Yeah, Pokeland, I think it has to be. We know that Sony has marketing rights for Call of Duty. They've had it, for years and years now. And we also know that usually we would have had Call of Duty review, like we would have seen it by now. Typically that is like in early May. If I'm remembering correctly, I think it is, in May at least, and we haven't seen it yet. So I think so, Pokeland. I think you can lock that in. I think Call of Duty will be there. I think that we finally get that Call of Duty announcement. Here's an interesting one from Forzathon, and one I've been wondering myself. How do you think Xbox will react to this PS5 event? Yes, let's talk about what this means for Microsoft and Xbox. Let me grab a really quick sip of my coffee, and then we're going to go into this. All right. What does this mean for Microsoft and Xbox? Here is what I will say, Forzathon. The pressure is on. They are turning up the heat. Xbox has been doing so well with their marketing, until that Inside Xbox. If you look before that Inside Xbox, their marketing had been so good. They had been showing the box. They had been talking openly about specs. They had been pretty darn transparent, lots of articles and information about backwards compatibility, you name it. Their marketing, I felt, had been just very, very good. Then Inside Xbox happened, which was met very, very mixed online. Sony had been quiet for so long that it was really giving Microsoft a platform. They didn't have much competition in terms of marketing because Sony just wasn't talking. Now, all of a sudden, you see Sony turning the heat up. We had that Unreal Engine 5 showcase, which was a separate thing, but clearly there's some sort of a partnership with Sony going on there, considering it was running on a PS5 dev kit that did huge metrics online, huge amounts of discussion, huge amounts of views on YouTube. So a ton. All of a sudden, you get that surge for PlayStation. Then you get the Ghost of Tsushima State of Play, which was the most watched State of Play ever. Then you get The Last of Us State of Play, which, again, second most watched State of Play ever. Now you have the PS5 show. Sony is turning up the heat. They have completely shifted. It's so funny because for so long people were like complaining, where's Sony? Where's Sony? Where's the marketing? Where's the talking? Where's the communication? They basically went from like 0 to 100 within weeks. So the pressure's on. That's my opinion on how this affects Xbox. I think Xbox has been doing really good outside of one misstep. I think they can completely recover from that with a big July showcase. We know their first party showcases in July. What I'll say is Xbox needs to bring it in July. It cannot be some small event. It cannot be. It cannot, because I think Sony is going to go pretty hard with this PS5 reveal, considering how quiet they've been up until recently, right? Think about it. They have not been announcing many games for actually years now. So Sony should have a lot to show here. So that's my overall thinking. If I was at Xbox, I would be making that July show straight fire. They need to come hard. They need to be very, very prepared, because the reality is that this final lead up to launch is so important for sales. It really is. Those last like 6 months or so, you're energizing people, you're advertising like crazy. You are building up to what should be a huge launch. So Forzathon, that's my thought. Xbox better come hard in July. JCat, formerly Wound Up Penguin, saying, yo, let's go. Hit that like button. Thank you so much for shouting it out. If you guys like doing the chat, if you like being part of the live chat, make sure you do hit that like. I don't spam out asking for likes a bunch, but it does help the YouTube algorithm, which means it helps people find my channel, which means we get more people in chat. I've noticed chat has been up in like the 110s almost the whole time for this chat. I think this is probably the most watched live chat we've ever had. So that's totally awesome. And if you guys want this chat to keep going, keep growing, the likes do definitely help people find it. Dave G, do you imagine pre-orders for PS5 will go live at event or after? Dave, I think after, and I only think that because I don't think we're getting a price. In order to do pre-orders, you usually need to have a price. There's some places that will put in like a generic price tag. They'll put it in for like some crazy high number. I remember, for transparency, I used to work for GameStop. I worked for GameStop for many, many years. I don't work for GameStop anymore, and I actually haven't worked for GameStop for multiple years, but I did work for them for quite a chunk of time. And I remember one thing back when we were taking pre-orders, I think it was like on the Vita. I think it was the Vita back then. We were taking pre-orders on it, and there was a generic price tag in there for like $9,999. Clearly, it would never be that much money, but like we knew it wouldn't be above that. So if someone put down a minimum deposit, we knew we were safe. You could see something like that happen, but I'm going to guess, Dave, no pre-orders yet because I don't think we're going to get a price at this event. I hope I'm wrong. But I'm going to guess, like I said earlier, I think you're going to see pre-orders not until probably August, because I think at that point you have to have price and you have to have pre-orders. So that's my guess. My guess is August is when pre-orders go live. Split End 89 also shouting out the like. Thank you very much. And thank you for everything you do, Split End. Sharif, how confident is Xbox to let Sony go first this time around? Ooh, I don't know if it's a confidence thing for Xbox or if it's just how this all kind of fell into place. Who knows? Maybe Microsoft had inside information that Sony was going to go in June. Clearly, that info's been floating around for a while. If journalists knew it, Xbox knew it. That's all I'm going to say there. Those companies know a lot about each other. They don't know everything, but they know a lot. So I would say if you saw journalists out there that had an idea that Sony was going in early June, Microsoft has probably known that also for quite a while. But I don't think them going in July actually is because of like a confidence thing. I just think that's when their games are going to be ready to be shown. I just think that, with the pandemic and stuff, it interrupted things. We know they were going to go at E3, but then that got canceled. My guess is just they feel like to have Halo looking at its best, to have those first-party games looking at their best, they just weren't going to be ready until July. So I could be wrong. I don't think it's like a confidence thing, but more just that's just how the timing worked out for them. Fintendo. I saw on Twitter you booked a day off work on June 3rd, and it's on June 4th. RIP. I'm looking forward to this. I predict 2 million concurrent viewers. Yeah, no, there was so many funny comments. As soon as this went live, like as soon as Sony made the announcement, my mentions were just flooded on Twitter with so many people being like, RIP Benji, RIP, you asked off for the 3rd and now it's the 4th. It all works out. I was actually already scheduled to be off June 4th. Didn't even ask for that day. That's just the way that my schedule worked out. So it actually, Fintendo, good news. I'm already off on the 4th, so we're good. I also got off for the 3rd just in case it was the 3rd so I can make it work. But nope, we're good to go. I am off June 4th. 2 million concurrent would be insane. I'm not going to say anything's impossible until we see the numbers. But yeah, 2 million would be wild. How long have we been going? We still got another good 10 plus, minutes to do chat. We're still good to go. Sean T. Torres. Microsoft needs to be proactive and should move their first party showcase up. Sean, I've been wondering that too. They can't ride the bad publicity from the gameplay and the hit that Sony is going to hit on the 4th. That's a month. Sean, I've been wondering the same, but I just think that they realistically can't. If they already said July, that means that's already what they've been telling their partners. Obviously, at their big July showcase, there's going to be some third-party games there as well. Shifting up a whole month would be really difficult. I actually think it would be a lot better for Microsoft if they were going in June. I think that would actually be way, way, way better for them if they were closer to Sony. So, because Sony's basically going to be riding momentum high for a full month on their own. We do know Xbox has a June event as well, but it's just not going to be as big of a thing as like what their July show is. I would say in a perfect world, Sean, Microsoft going in June would have been the better play. I really do think so, but I just don't think they can move it up. I think there's a reason that show's in July. That's when their games will be ready. They've told third parties, I'm sure, not until July. I just think it would be too much work to move that a whole month. So, Not the best scenario for them, but not the end of the world either. It's just that July show needs to be big. Like I was talking about earlier, they cannot play around. July has to be all out. Mr. Greedy. Dude, I'm so hyped. Me too. I am so hyped. Wonder what games they will show. Jason Schreier said first and third party. Yeah, I think we've talked about it, a few that I'm expecting for sure. Gorilla, I'm locking that one in. Resident Evil 8, feeling very, very good about. Maybe a Final Fantasy in there, completely possible. Obviously, you're going to see more first-party games than just Gorilla, so who shows up? I think you're going to get either a Spider-Man or God of War sequel announcement. It'd be insane if they announce both, and I'm not expecting that, but I think you'll get one of them. I think one of them will make that announcement. I know it hasn't been super long for those games, but I feel like Sony's coming hard and pushing really, really hard on this show. So I think you're going to get one of those announced. I don't think it's going to be like this big giant gameplay showcase for whichever one of those gets announced, but I think you will get like a teaser type announcement for one of those. I do think one of those shows up, either God of War or Spidey. Silence PP7. What do you think the market for Manhunt 3 would be? Ooh, that's interesting. The first two weren't big sellers, but a psychological stealth horror game with Rockstar's production values seems like it'd be a huge deal today. Yeah, that's really interesting. And that game would be very controversial. Manhunt's always been a controversial franchise. Like if you remember, even when 1 and 2 came out, it was like super controversial. I think a Manhunt 3 could sell. I think it would be bigger seller than 1 and 2 were. I just wonder if they want to play with that controversy. They'd have to play that right. You know, they'd have to play the marketing on that one right. Alex Bailey. Hi, Benji. How are you? What's your expectations on how Switch will do this holiday? Fun. With PS5 and Xbox Series X releasing. Very good. Yeah, I think the Switch is still going to do amazing. I don't think you're going to see a record-setting holiday out of the Switch. I think Switch will be down this year compared to last year unless Nintendo has a big price drop lined up, which is possible. Maybe Nintendo's finally going to slash, $50 off of the Switch this holiday. If they have a price drop, maybe it can be the biggest. If there is no price drop, I am expecting Switch to sell less this holiday than last holiday. Last holiday for Switch was pretty darn insane. And I don't think Nintendo has something as big as Pokemon was, or, as big as Smash even in the December before that lined up. I just don't think Nintendo has a massive mega hitter like that hitting this holiday. I think Zelda's probably going to miss this year and come out next year. So good. I would say Switch is going to do really, really, really good. I just don't think it's going to be their best holiday. I think it will be down from last year. Unless there's a price drop. Rough Diamond. Hey, Benji, that's hype. Let's go. Yes, very, very hyped. James W. It was always going to sell good no matter what the leaks did. Yeah, always. Yeah, I never had a doubt that The Last of Us Part 2 would be huge. Question has just always been, is it the record breaker or not? No doubt it's going to be massive. It's just, does it break Spidey's record? Still up in the air, but possible. J-Cat. Question about the rumored Xbox Lockhart. Yeah, where is it? Right? Do you think it would outsell the Series X? Ooh, like the One S outsold the One X? Ooh. Or will it be more like the Switch Lite, which is still outsold by the OG Switch? What a fascinating question, J-Cat. What a fascinating question. Which do I think would sell more? Man, I think they'd be close. I think you'd see an interesting split on that. I don't think it would be as big of a gap as you see with the One S and the One X, where, yes, the One S sells way more units than the X. The X does well, actually. It is like a decent chunk of Xbox sales, but the One S is definitely the majority of it. So I think you would get a closer, evening out than that. But I also don't think it would be as lopsided traditionally as the regular Switch has been compared to the Lite. I think you would see an interesting split there. Maybe like a 60-40 either way. because you do have to account, like, there are a lot of us forget, but there are a lot of like very casual gamers that are only playing Madden and Call of Duty. I mean, that's tens of millions of people. That is a lot of people. And not all those people care about the very best cutting edge graphics. So there is, I think, a lot of people that would buy Lockhart, but there's also a ton of really hardcore gamers. That's also tens of millions of people. So as a guess, I think it'd actually be a pretty interesting split. I think they'd be fairly close. Total guess here, but maybe like 60-40 one way or the other. Split end 89. Where might one get a fly shirt like that? I get most of my clothes at Target. I get them from other places too, but most of my clothes I buy from Target. Teddy Morton. And that's where the shirt's from, Target. I think there's a reason why Ghost of Tsushima is getting higher social, because it's a new IP. I do think that's part of it. I definitely think that's part of it. People are kind of know what The Last of Us 2 is all about. I actually think, Teddy, that is a factor. I think that so many people, I mean, The Last of Us it looks amazing in all the video footage that they're showing, but it is much more of a known commodity, right? Like, we know what The Last of Us is. This is a sequel to The Last of Us. It's going to do a lot of unique things, a lot of different things, but it's still The Last of Us. It's going to be, in some ways, very similar to The Last of Us, with, of course, differences. Ghost of Tsushima was like a complete unknown. So I do think your part, I definitely think that was a factor why Ghost of Tsushima was so big on social metrics. This was like the first real look we got at Ghost of Tsushima. It dominated Twitter the day that it was announced, or the State of Play. The State of Play did big Twitter metrics. And also, it had the best State of Play views ever. And I think that's part of it. I think part of it was people just trying to see if they were interested in Ghost and things like that. And then I also think one of the reasons that The Last of Us metrics are good online, but not crazy, is, like I said, partially people also trying to avoid spoilers. Benji, any data on Xenoblade yet? Not yet. I have not seen any data yet on Xenoblade sell-through or shipments. I haven't seen anything on Xenoblade yet. All right, we're going to have to wrap up within the next 5 minutes. So we got about 5 minutes of stream left. I'm going to try and hit a couple more questions. I'm going to have to cut out in about 5 minutes. So let's get a few more in, and then we are going to call it a chat. Sorry to anyone whose questions I don't get to. Pierre485, do you think the high demand for Switch hardware will prevent Nintendo from stockpiling Switch for the holidays? What could they do about the production issues in Southeast Asia? Man, that's a complex and interesting question, Pierre. They can stockpile for holiday for sure, because we know that production in general is being increased. Nintendo approached their manufacturing partners and asked for increased production over what was expected. So, like I said, things are slowing down now. May is not looking like March or April. So, like, not at all. May is going to be much lower than March and April for Switch. Much lower. Still potentially a new record for the current gen, but it is not going to be these. I can't put the NDA number out there, but a lot of people know what Switch did the last 2 months. It will not be anywhere close to either of those months. So things are sort of leveling back out. Stuart O'Connor. Keep up the good work, Benji. Thank you so much, Stuart. Doing the best I can every day. Trying to improve every single day. Looks like Sony are taking this very seriously. I agree. I think they're going to come out with some big announcements. I think you are dead on, Stuart. They've been quiet for too long. They've got to have some big things to show. MH Jafarian, thanks, Benji, for all your good work. Thank you. Kojima said Death Stranding was successful and they have enough money for the next project. I'm so happy. Yeah, I was glad to see that. I'm a big Kojima fan. One thing that we all did see was that Death Stranding did not have great legs. It kind of fell off basically every single chart. When you look at the European charts, decent launch, then whoo, Japan, decent launch, then whoo, US, decent launch, and then so the good news for Death Stranding is it launched pretty good. Didn't have great legs, which is a bummer for that game, but it is good to hear that it was profitable. Kojima says it was a success. It was a success to the point that their next game is completely safe. So, and PC release is obviously going to help with sales as well. So I am happy to see that. also. We don't know if Death Stranding really met Sony's expectations. I still think that's completely up in the air. We don't have a hardcore answer on that. But in terms of profitability, we do know, it passed break even. It was profitable. All right, let's get one more question. Let me see. I want to grab one more really good one here. Let me see if I missed any super chats first, because I never want to miss a super chat. So let me make sure there's no super chat questions before we call a last one. All right, doesn't look like I missed any super chats. So let's grab yeah, here we go. I'm gonna grab this last one from Kieran Buckley here because I think it's interesting. And sorry for any questions I missed. There's a ton I missed, but I actually have to go to work today. So I'm sorry. I would stream for much longer if I could. But let's grab this last one from Kieran Buckley. Do you think there will be plenty of new game reveals for next year during this summer, despite fear of 2021 games may likely be more affected by the virus? Kieran, I do think you're going to see a lot of games announced for next year. And I think actually even at the Sony showcase here on June 4th, I think you're going to see some announcements for games next year as well. It sounds like some games internally are probably being delayed out of this year to next year. So I actually think that I think you're going to see a lot of stuff announced for next year. Actually, you're going to see some stuff announced for this year as well. Of course, you need some big launch games. We already know some of them. We know Assassin's Creed Valhalla. We know Call of Duty is going to be there. So there's going to be more for this year. But I think at both Sony's event and Microsoft's July event, I do think they're going to announce games for 2021 as well. I don't think these are going to be just focused on launch. I think you're going to see some further out projects as well, because when you're selling a new console, you want to hype the launch, but you also want to hype what people can expect moving forward. Give people a little bit of a portfolio. Hey, if you buy in now, over the next year to 2 years, you're going to see some really amazing stuff. So I do think that you see some stuff announced for further out than just launch as well, over the summer. All right, everyone, I'm going to call that a chat. Thank you so much for everyone who jumped into the live chat. I think this might have been the most viewed one we ever had. We were almost the entire stream above 100 people, sometimes up into the 110. So thank you so much, everyone, that's continuing to make this live chat grow. You're all amazing. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, make sure you hit subscribe. We do 1 to 2 of these live chats every single week. They're one of my favorite things I do. We have a great community here. So thanks so much, everyone. Hit that like button if you like the streams. Subscribe. I'll see you either on Twitter or in the next video. And June 4th, everyone, June 4th, PlayStation 5 reveal is here. So no matter what, I will be live streaming on the 4th. Thanks, everyone. Stay safe. Have some fun. Go play some video games, and I will see you all soon. Bye.